Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is actually Saturday, June 23rd, 2018, and we're doing our weekly country roads today with our friend Winston Shrout. And welcome, Winston. How are you today?
Well, doing pretty good. Always happy to see your smiling face. So we'll go with it.
Thanks. Well, I was actually the queen of discouragement this morning, and Winston cheered me up. So we're good to go. We're going to be talking today about trusts and fiduciary responsibilities, a little bit more on the technology side of things that Winston is has such an expertise at. So I'm going to hand it over to Winston. It'll be a little bit shorter today, our report, but Winston can explain all that to you as well.
Yeah, I will explain a little bit of it. Uh, as many of you know, Louisa has been uploading previous reports so that they're not lost to the public, so that people can view those kind of things. And it has turned into a very expensive operation to get those things uploaded. And so we're going to cut this one kind of short today. We usually go for 2 hours, and I like to go for 2 hours because I can fully expand the thought and so forth. But today we're going to cut it short so that when she uploads it, it's not nearly as expensive. And so, for those of you, again, who have contributed to help with these projects, thank you very much. And for some of the others, if you can afford a little bit, please send it in because, even Louisa has to eat. She has children at home. She has expenses and all those kind of things. So, please, evaluate. Can you do without that cappuccino today? Can you do without that movie this weekend? And if you feel like you can, then contribute those things toward. And then get onto her, what do you call them?
The Patreon page or the
Yeah,
PayPal,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
PayPal on the
Yeah.
website. Thank you, Winston. Yeah.
And those are the ways that you can participate with us. Well, one of the things I found out early on as an educator is that if if people receive information or knowledge, like what I share, if they get it without an investment, they do not use it. They simply don't. And so, in my circumstance as an educator doing seminars, doing DVDs, teachings, and all these kind of things, you know, uh, if I could afford to give it away for free, I still would not, because we have found time and time again that people do not invest, then they don't use, what they're given. See, this has always been the big argument about what we call free education. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, the concept of free schools.
Hmm.
And, again, what do the students themselves invest except for doing homework and being on school on time? What's their investment? Or what's the investment of their parents and all these kind of things? And so you start to see the impact of education all over the place. And if you don't make the investment, for instance, some of the information that I'll share today, let me tell you what my investment was to get that. And that was, I got that from a fellow who was actually in prison. And I used to go and visit him on the weekends. And from where I was living to where the prison was a 7.5 hour drive one way to get that information. So I'd get up, maybe at 1 a.m., jump in my old pickup truck, start driving. And I'd get there and I'd spend the day with him. And
Wow.
he was really smart. He could really tell me things about some of these concepts and so forth. And then if I could afford it, on Saturday night, I'd stay in a motel locally there. If I couldn't afford it, I simply slept on the front seat of the pickup truck. Now, that's a long way to go, for only one day. And so if I could go there on Saturday and Sunday, I felt like my weekend would be more complete. And then whenever I got done, jump in the pickup truck and head back for another 7.5 hours. Now, what kind of investment did I make to get that information. And we've used that information time and time again. You know, hundreds of people have used that technology, you know, and they got it from me, you know, for maybe $100, you know, for a DVD, or they come to a seminar, you know, and that kind of thing.
Mm.
You know, how does that investment compare, you know, to the investment I made? Well, it's nowhere close. It's nowhere close. But that's not the point. The point is, if you don't make an investment, you won't appreciate the information that you get. So we've been doing these GoldFish reports for free. And philosophically, or so forth, I disagree with that. But at least we've been able to, you know, stimulate some different things. Because again, you know, if people don't make the if they don't invest, then the value of what they receive is greatly diminished. They'll put it on the shelf. They won't think about it after it's over with. Now, I want to go into today some more of the concepts of trust. Oh, yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to comment. Thank you for saying that. We don't make them for free. They cost to be made. There's
Yes, they
costs
do.
involved in making these, producing them, uploading them,
We're giving them
and
away for free.
posting them. It's that we're disseminating the information for free. I just wanted to clarify that because it all because we, you know, it is a costly, extremely time consuming. Yeah. But it costs a
Yeah.
lot of money in terms of bandwidth and subscriptions to get, you know, certain products, videos, you know, to do just to do an Acrobat document, a PDF document. You have to have a subscription to Acrobat Pro. We have to have all kinds, and just so we can upload documents and convert them from, you know, words to PDFs and things like that. So I mean, you wouldn't think that there's all that involved, but when we upload these to our website and we post, you know, documents, there's that might not cost anything to do, but to convert them, I have to get software to do that. So because they're
Yeah.
not all PDF files, so it's amazing to know what's involved in the kind of thing that we're doing, because we're trying to really provide a research resource, a repository of information. So it's not. It takes time, and it obviously takes subscriptions too in order to do that. It takes subscriptions for Zoom to do the recordings. So there's lots of subscriptions involved in doing this in order to keep it going. So it is wonderful and I do have some really great viewers who do contribute, and we're very grateful. It's just that we, you know, could use
We need
more.
it to keep, we need contributions to
We need
keep it
more
up.
people. We need, yeah, right, exactly. We need more contributions to keep it going.
Well,
So
let
thank you.
me give a short history of, you know, of solutions in commerce in that respect. And that is, you know, way back when I first started looking into some of these concepts and so forth, the amount of information that was available was very, very slim. And from time to time, somebody would do a presentation or a workshop or something like that, and somebody would videotape it. By the time it was copied and passed around to all the rest of us, you know, and so forth, it was grainy. I mean, you couldn't hardly even watch it,
Hmm.
and the audio was terrible. And so, when we started in solutions in commerce, you know, we decided that we were going to put out a good production. We want to see, and one of the things that we found was that, you know, if somebody looks at some kind of grainy presentation that's poorly done, poorly videotaped, and audio and stuff is terrible, the people are turned off by it, and you can't really get the information to them
Hmm.
if it looks that way. And so we attempted to use the very best, you know, that was available to us at that time. Eventually, we upgraded the person who was doing the audio visual for us. He upgraded his computer until he got to the point he could actually do a Hollywood production with the equipment and technology he had. What did that cost? It cost a whole bunch, trust me.
I'm
And
sure.
so we were depending on participation at the seminars and so forth, and the sale of the products, the productions, and so forth to support that effort.
Mm.
And so, on our end, the solutions in commerce, the amount of money that was invested to create a production was, in our price range, it was phenomenal
Right, exactly.
to get those things done. Now, if we get down to our present time, and attendance at seminars has fallen way off, and these kind of things, and and simply, if I can no longer financially support the efforts being made, I'm going to stop. And it's the same thing with GoldFish.
Right.
If Louisa finds it's financially impossible to continue, she'll just stop. And then where will you folks be? That's my question. Where will you be if you can't turn on and listen to some of these productions she's put out, some of the productions I put out and so forth? Where will you be? Well, you'll be jumping in your pickup truck and driving 7.5 hours to go visit somebody. See how you like that? It's not easy. Again, like I say, I'm not being critical of people and their circumstances and everything, but I am encouraging participation. Now, when we get into today, the first thing I wanted to screen share is an article that was put out some years ago by one of the early energy inserters. So let me just go to that, and let me explain a little bit about that. Let's see here. See if I can find it first off. Yeah, here it is. Now, years and years ago, there was a fellow named Alfred the Dask, and he had put out, it's kind of humorous, he had put out a production that was called Anti-Shyster website.
Well, that's pretty funny. Anti-shyster.
Well, this individual I knew,
Pretty funny.
I'd met him on a few different occasions, and actually he came to my seminar that I did in San Antonio. So I gave him time. He gave about, I don't know, 20 or half-hour presentation. But he's one of the early ones. He's one of those who had been at this a long time, and he had taken a beating for it, just like many had. He's one of that bunch out of Texas. There were some really good folks out of Texas during those days, and Alfred was one of them.
Oh yeah, I love folks from Texas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got a chance to meet and associate with some of those. So I knew Alfred. I met him on, different seminars, workshops, and meetings and stuff over the time. Another good one was Robert Fox. Robert's passed on now. Actually, Robert was a Canadian, and he had seen the value of what was going on. So he had gone to Texas and worked with some of those. Another one I just dearly loved, and I think I've mentioned him before, was Rice McLeod. I think some of the old timers are going to remember Rice. Rice has passed on now. Rice was actually a Native American, and he had actually he was born, I think, in some of the families or tribes up in New York area, but he had ended up in an orphanage in Texas, and he grew up in Texas, so he was really a Texan. But he was purely, he was 100% native, and he was the kind of guy, if you just got within 10 feet of him, you were enamored with his energy. He had that kind of energy, and so everybody loved him. But anyway, we're talking about Alfred now. As far as I know, I've kind of lost contact with him. As far as I know, he's still with us. But early on, Alfred was investigating some of these early concepts, putting out information about them. And so it's very good for people to go back and review some of the earliest efforts, because, we all need a certain evolution of understanding. And so here we are in 2018, and perhaps we weren't around or involved way back in, let's say, 2000 or whatever, but it's good to go back and review to see how these things have evolved, because you're going to have that same evolution. You simply can't enter school at the 12th grade and make any sense out of what happens.
Mm.
You
Makes
really
sense.
need to go through the elementary and middle schools in order.
Mm.
And so I try to make some of those things available so that people can have that natural evolution of knowledge and understanding. So basically what we got here with Alfred in his anti-shyster magazine.
Shyster. Was that a website or a magazine, you said?
Yeah, I think I
Shyster.
think I don't know if it's still up that way or not. I mean, he was up and down with some of that kind of thing.
Anti-shyster. I love it.
But
I can tell he's from New York. No, the other guy was from New York, not this guy.
yeah,
You were saying around
Ross
Jersey.
was born in New York, but he grew up in Texas in an orphanage.
Right.
Anyway, and then Robert Fox was a Canadian. He went to Texas, and I think Alfred was probably a native Texan. But a lot of good things come out of those folks during those times. Anyway, I won't spend a whole lot of time because we're, like I say, today we're only going to have 1 hour production. We're going to try to hold it down simply because it's costing so much to put these things up that we're, 2 hours is. And so I'm just going to skim through some of these things. And so I'll provide certainly all this information that people can go back and review. But so we won't go into some of the things because there's a couple of things that I want to spend more time on. But this is a real good review by Alfred, way back when, about trust. And some of these things have been, worked on. We have more information, for instance, about some of these things. But these are some of the earliest informations that had been researched and published. What did, in those days, what did it cost Alfred to put these things up? So again, when you start to talk about the initial investments to bring these things into 2018, those investments were very, very high. Anyway, first part of this, he kind of goes into a breakdown so that people understand. He says the essence of all trust is divided title to property. And then to illustrate, he says, let's suppose a man owns a perfect title, which in legal terms, again, back in those days, Alfred wasn't so much involved with commercial concepts as he was with law, what people generally call common law. And so when some of these concepts of commercial redemption and so forth had come out, as it turned out, Alfred was in jail. So I was corresponding with him by mail because I had read on the internet, I'd read a letter he had written to someone, from jail, basically saying, I don't understand what this accepted for value is. It doesn't make sense to me. And from a common law perspective, it would not. And so I undertook at that point to write him a letter, physically write a letter because he was in jail, to try to explain some of the underlying concepts, because you have to get out of common law, you have to get into commerce for some of these things to make any sense. And so he had not been exposed to some of those concepts at that point. And so I wanted to illustrate them to him, those things to him. And so there for a time, we corresponded back and forth, about some of the concepts. And then I had a chance, we had a workshop way up in the middle of nowhere, Idaho one time, and Alfred came to it. So I had a chance to visit with him. Robert Fox was there too at that very one. And so we had a, chance. And then eventually, when I did the first seminar in Las Vegas, I had Robert come. Now, Robert was blind. He wasn't totally blind, but he was, you had to put things in big print for him to see him. But even with that handicap, Robert did marvelous work, marvelous things. And again, he wasn't so much on the commerce side as he was on the common law side. But anyway, I had him come to Las Vegas, brought him up there and everything. And so he could, so people can see these people. So they can know who it is, that are doing these things. Like I said, at one time I even had Roger Elvey come to one of our seminars. What a treat that was.
Oh, geez, that must have been.
Yeah, and then like I said, at one time when we did our San Antonio seminar, I had Alfred. Alfred came, and so I said, well, as long as he's there, we'll just let him, expose to people, who these people are, because you have to know that. And then anyway, not getting off with too much of that. But anyway, Alfred was trying to explain here about divided title. And to understand what a trust is, you have to understand divided title. Now, we've talked about this in some of our other presentations and so forth, but here's an explanation of it from a common law type of perspective. Okay, so he says, let's suppose a man owns perfect title. Now, in commerce, we would refer to that as a perfected security interest in collateral. Okay? So on the common law side, he's using these words. On the commercial side, we would use these other words, but it leads to the same concept. So suppose a man owns a perfect title, also known as lawful, complete, or full title to a home, and decides to create a trust to shelter that home. He first grants or donates the perfect title to his home into the trust. The home thus becomes trust property, also known as trust corpus. The grantor then divides his perfect title to the home into two subcomponents, which are legal title and equitable title. Each subtitle contains a different set of rights. Legal title includes the rights of actual control and disposal of trust property. Equitable title includes the right of possession and use of trust property. Now, we've had some of these battles from time to time between the legal title and the equitable or the possessory title in regards to the trustee and the beneficiary. Matter of fact, I was called one time. A fellow hired me, brought me all the way down into California. I think we talked about this a little bit. Whereas the grandfather had this ranch, it had been passed on to the daughter. She had put it into trust for the benefit of her 3 children. But the attorney for the trust was trying to undercut the beneficiaries because the attorney was the trustee for the trust. He had the legal title, which he was trying to sell. And so this one particular fellow who was a beneficiary called me down into California, and I think I spent about 3 days there working on some of these things. And the first thing we did was put together the paperwork to stop that attorney from what he was doing. And then we went into the commercial techniques. For instance, we used a commercial lien to establish the claim of the beneficiary, because this attorney was simply trying to rip off the trust. That's what it amounted to. And so again, when you get into some of these trust situations, you have to be very, very careful. This particular trust had passed down, for some time, and the beneficiaries, were not the original grantor, which kind of put them in a bad position from that respect. And so they were fixing to get ripped off by this trustee. And so we had to put an end to it. And so we used some of these techniques and so forth, that we've developed over the years to do that. Anyway.
Well, a trustee position is a very important position. They can really.
We're going to show you at the end here. At the end here, we're going to show how to deal with some of that.
Okay.
All right, but getting along here, because like I say, we really have to go fast to get the points I want to make.
Okay.
But in any event, I'll provide this article And again, let's see. He does have down here at the bottom. He does have. I don't know if this website is still there. It may not be. It's called Suspicions News Magazine.
Suspicions, suspicions.info.
Yeah, very good article. And he, like I say, if you can find some, a lot of it, I have I have downloaded a lot of these things and have them on my
Shyster.
computer. This is one of them.
I love the shyster one.
Yeah, the anti-shyster stuff.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a real good article. And then after he goes through trust a little bit, then he goes into some other elements here. Let me see. Let me go down just a little bit further. Yeah. Now, as a part of, he talked about constructive trust. And we understand that implied constructive trust. That's what we're all fall victim to so many times. Then he has a real good description of at arm's length, because as beneficiary, in many instances, you have to do things at arm's length. And that's why we use notaries. In many instances, we utilize notaries so that the individual stays at arm's length. A lot of people don't know, but a notary is a consulate position. It's a consulate position, a notary. And so, again, when we're doing business with a foreign jurisdiction, in other words, from people to a fiction, that's a foreign jurisdiction. And so this article here that Alfred is talking about has to do with keeping things at arm's length. And so if we want to do business with a foreign jurisdiction, we would use an intermediary or a notary.
Interesting.
In that case, so that that's just the way internationally that it properly should be done. So again, this is real good information here, and I'll supply it, and people can study it and go look for the other information and stuff that Alfred has to share. Like I say, he's one of the early ones,
Mm-hmm.
and he put out good information at risk to himself. And
I used that once, Winston. I used arm's length when I was appealing my property tax increase, because
exactly.
they were trying to use comparables, and there was this one house that was part of a purchase of a business, and so I said, well, that wasn't an arm's length transaction, and you couldn't use that as a comparable to base my So I did. I won like half of. I got like half of it decreased. Should have been the whole increase. Should have been. Wiped off, but at least I got at least half of it, which was about $12,000 on the property tax value, which they were assessing taxes on top of that,
Great,
as
yeah. So
opposed to like
you understand the
24,000.
concept.
Yeah, it wasn't an arm's length transaction, and I did have someone who I knew that was that was it. If I didn't say those words, it would have been a different story. Those words were very important words, and they'll ask you, if you learn any of this technology Winston teaches you, realize you need to be able to back it up, because I had to
Yep.
back that up. That was the key term to use, but I had to back it up. I had to really understand and explain what I meant by that. And when I said it wasn't your typical transaction, an arm's length transaction is something that is, a typical transaction. It was beyond that. This was part of a business deal. So you don't know if you got the better deal on the house or you paid more on the house and less on the business, because there was a house and a business involved in the transaction. So it wasn't a
Good.
typical, yeah. So I did, yeah, so that did work. That was good. But like I said to
A
people,
real live testimonial right here from GoFish Report, Louisa.
yeah, but you have to back it up. So you can't just,
Yeah.
get the DVDs. I like to get the transcripts because I like to have it there. I travel with it. It's easy for me to kind of flip through the pages and go right to things. But I like to have both if I can. But definitely, I think, because I like to, it's always great to see Winston on those DVDs. It's always
I
great
don't know
because
about
he's always
there.
sitting there. No, he's so friendly. Who doesn't like to be interacting with someone who's friendly? But it's but you have to be able to back it up. If you go into court using any of these things, you have to know how to argue it. That's what's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
not so much to argue, but to present yourself. For instance, I was dealing with a fellow, and he had gotten sued
Hmm.
wrongfully. He had hired an attorney, and the attorney had done a very poor job, so he had to fire him. And so he went back into court to, to speak for himself, and the judge was just as rude to him as could be. And he called me and said, "Hey, why was the judge so rude to me?" And so I talked to him. I said, "Well, how did the conversation go? How did you, present yourself in that situation?" He told me. I said, "Okay." I said, "Next time when you go to court, just tell the judge right first off that you're there as a third party interest intervener, and see how the conversation goes then." So he did. Next time he went back into court, he just simply announced to the judge, "Well, I'm here in the capacity of a third party interest intervener under injury." And the conversation switched in a
Bet.
big hurry. And the judge at that point was willing to speak to him
Mhm.
at a certain level. And so again, it's some of these things, if because we have people wandering into court all the time and getting slammed and hammered and all these kind of things. Again, one of Ross McLeod's, the fellow I was talking about, one of his favorite techniques, he just walks through the bar and tell the judge, "Well, I'm here today. What do you want me to be, the trustee or the beneficiary?" He started out his conversation that way.
So that's the thing, man. You can go in there and just take command of that courtroom, like you explained in some of our previous reports, where you made sure that judge accepted his oath of office on record. That
Yeah,
turned him into a judge and out of the administrator role, which put you on the private
correct.
side. And that was, see, I listen, Winston. I pay close attention. I'm taking
Good.
all the notes. Of course, I'm paying attention. I
Very
have
good.
done with our reports. I got 10 pages of notes here, and that's not even everything, really. I mean, it's just not even everything we talk about.
Well, again, people perceive you and they respond to you of how they perceive you. For instance, years and years ago, I hadn't been to a family reunion in Kentucky for, I don't know, a long time. And most of the people, who might have known me as a young person, as a grown man, they didn't recognize me because they couldn't. I mean, so anyway, I had a cousin, second cousin, that's called a kissing cousin. Anyway, she just grabbed me by the
Oh
arm and
man, she must have been from Kentucky, huh?
yeah, she would take me by the arm. The old timers sat around the shade, had their hats pulled down over their eyes and
Yeah.
stuff, and she'd take me up to them because she lived there and knew all the old timers and stuff. So she dragged me around some of the old timers, and she'd say, "Well, Uncle so and so," she said, "Do you know who this is?" And they kind of raise their cap up and look at me and say, "No, I don't reckon I do." And she said, "Listen, here's what she said. She said, 'This is Walter's boy.'" Oh, see? And so once I was presented as Walter's son,
uh,
Walter knew very well. That's my father.
uh,
Walter's son now, rung a bell, whereas
right.
they just looked at me and said, "No, I don't know who that is." So again, it's how people perceive us as
Yeah.
as to the results of how they interact with us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
so whether it's in court
Context.
or family reunions, it's the same thing.
Right.
How do we recognize the people that we're uh, visiting with and stuff?
Yeah,
So that's really, really important.
we got those kissing cousins down in Tennessee. Also,
I'm
so,
just joking. I'm
yeah,
just joking
I
about
know.
it.
Nah, they're really down there.
Well, things are handled a little bit differently some places.
Okay, moving on. Moving on up.
Moving on. Yeah, let's review another one of the things here I want to show. Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's look
arm's
at
length
this.
was not a typical, when I said arm's length, I meant it was not a typical transaction. So if anybody wants
No,
to use that, you realize you have to show that it was not a typical transaction, the sale of that house. So the price that they were using was not representative of a normal sale.
yeah,
Okay, so that's how I wanted people to understand. I didn't want to mislead anybody. Go ahead, Winston.
Yeah, so go back and review, for what Louise is talking about there, go back and review Alfred's article on arm's length. I think you'll be greatly pleased. Now, this one we've referred to before. I think people have seen this one. I just want to refer back to it. As expressed otherwise, the powers delegated to a public officer. Let me get this a little bit closer. Anyway, the powers delegated to a public officers are held in trust for the people and are to be exercised in behalf of the government or of all citizens who may need the intervention of the officer. You remember how we spent so much time on scope of office and bonding of public office?
Yes, we did. I hope that's up. I hope that is one of the ones that's on the archive. But if not, hopefully we'll be up there soon.
We'll get it up eventually.
Yeah. We need like additional expenses to help get this archive going because people are looking for these videos, and I can't. It's so much expense to upload them in terms of like gigabytes because that's how much it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay,
anyway, he says, furthermore, the view has been expressed that all public officers within whatever branch and whatever level of government and whatever be their private vocation. So regardless of all those conditions, they say they are trustees of the people and accordingly labor under every disability and prohibition imposed by the law on trustees relative to the making of personal financial gain from the discharge of their trust. Now, in any trust situation, the trustee needs to be paid, and I've emphasized that.
Yes, you have.
But they don't need to be overpaid, and they can't pay themselves like this incentive program I was talking about on this other couple of times ago.
Who decides who pays the trustee?
Exactly. It has to be in the trust indenture what it is, what that payment should be. And they have so obviously with these incentive programs, they found ways to get around that. Anyway, I'll get back into that. It says that is a public officer occupies a fiduciary responsibility to the political entity on whose behalf he or she serves and owes, that means they're in debt, and owes a fiduciary duty to the public. It has been said that fiduciary responsibilities of a public officer cannot be less than those of a private individual. Furthermore, it has been stated that any enterprise undertaken by the public official which tends to weaken the public confidence and undermine the sense of security for individual rights is against public policy. For instance, I think I told the story about that town in southern Utah I was working with where there were 3 judges in there, and at least 2 of them were involved in it. They had set up a bail bonds business right inside the local county jail.
So they still do this today. I'm sure they do.
Well, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Now, how does that look? This article right here is saying that's a no-no.
Yeah.
That's a no-no because the other bail bonds business in that area were not operating out of the county jail, and the bail bondsmen and these other private businesses were not open 24/7. It's the favorite trick of police officers to go arrest somebody on Friday afternoon.
Oh, and they're all getting kickbacks from the bail bondsmen. Well, we did talk about that kickback racket, Winston. It's in there. It's goes around, comes around.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's an obvious conflict of interest. And so that is a breach of fiduciary responsibility as is described here in this article.
In the Shyster report.
Well, yeah, anti-Shyster.
Anti-Shyster.
You're not going to get off that, are you?
No, I love it. I think it's so appropriate. I think we should rename the GoldFish report to the anti-Shyster report.
All right, well, let's look at some of these other articles quickly here because we're going to have some. Now, this particular right here was provided by that guy and I've told the story how he developed this.
Mm-hmm.
But here is the basis of an appointment of fiduciary. This I got from that guy I used to drive 7.5 hours to go see.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Winston. Thank you
See what I
for your
mean?
hardship. But some of it's a
Well,
hardship
no, it's
too.
not
Not
a hardship, but
well,
I'm saying
mine
what.
is. My
Yeah.
investment is sometimes. Truly.
How much energy do we have to put into some of these things to bring them forward? That's our point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I won't. This is the basis of some of the other things I'll show. But you can study this. Listen, if you could study this one page right here for 2 weeks, just
Ooh.
with the information that's in it,
Mm-hmm.
you could spend 2 weeks studying this one document
Okay.
to actually get a comprehension of what it is. Now, what we've done with that particular information, we have created documents that we've used successfully many, many times with appointment of fiduciary, because what I did was I went and used that information
Mm.
in a court situation in association with acceptance for value.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah. And so again, taking the concept of appointment of fiduciary
Mm-hmm.
and shifting the liability in a court case to the fiduciary using acceptance for value technique.
And who do you appoint as the fiduciary?
Well, you can appoint any attorney you want to.
Any attorney you want to.
Well, we don't have time to go back over those stories because
I know.
I'm going to run you up here on time.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, here's an example, and it needs explanation as to why we're doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, if you want to understand why we're doing it this way, go onto my website and get the civil, I think it's called,
Civil court?
civil court DVD for a full explanation of how because this is not typical of what you would see.
Mm-hmm.
But again, here we are coming in, third party interest intervener. See, this is how you overcome the problem of the court looking at you as a beneficiary. A beneficiary needs representation by an attorney. Okay, so if you need to be represented as a beneficiary in the court, how do you overcome that? Third party interest intervener. That's how you do it. Okay. So again, what I did was I took and adapted this appointment of fiduciary that this fellow showed. And look here. There's where we bring in the accepted for value in return for settlement. And it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
It's necessary. And, for an explanation, again, if you don't know accepted for value technology, let me again encourage you to go on the website and purchase accepted for value. There's a 3-volume series. This is not easy. This is not grade school information. And to really apply and understand the concept, you need to do it. Because if you're ever called to explain what it is you did, you for darn certain better be able to explain yourself. People just jump and do acceptance for value all over the place, having no idea what it is they're doing. So you need to understand, but this is a key element of this technique that we're using with appointment of fiduciary. So again, we'll go along because we're going to, like I say, we're trying to hold this one down a little bit on the time so it's not so costly to upload, but I'm trying to get all the information that I can so that people would have, Yep. All right. Now, so many people a lot of times will come to me and say, well, Winston, what do we do when the fiduciary doesn't perform? I didn't write this one, but I've collected it over the time. And here's the situation.
Mm-hmm. This is serious, though. A fiduciary.
Yeah, serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one right here is a court pleading that a fellow put together. Apparently he's from California somewhere, I think. This provost fellow. And here's the case number if you want to go look it up and see what happened. But anyways, California, God forbid anything good comes out of California, but it did. Oh, listen, that state there.
Oh, it's a mess today. Such a mess.
Oh, brother.
Man.
Anyway, this pleading is called Notice of Fiduciary Breach
Mm-hmm.
of this judge, I guess. And then he has, in support of his accusation of breach, he has a memorandum of law in support of it. So you can read through this. Good information here. And then when he gets into memorandum in law in support of breach of fiduciary duty, there's a world of information here. This guy did great research. I mean, he even goes into 18 U.S.C. 241, which we like to use. So again, I'm just trying to bring as much information to people as possibly I can. And so I'll send you all these things so you can put them up on this. So again, like I say, today we're kind of shortcutting. We don't have time to explain, but I had felt like we had talked about trust, and so I had wanted to expand on some of the concepts and give the basis, so that people would know, where a lot of this information had actually come from. And there's been monumental effort made by a lot of individuals who have researched, who have put these things in practice. Like I've kind of given the illustration that it's like walking through a minefield. And that is, you take a few steps. If it don't blow up, you take a few more steps. If it does blow up, then you have to redirect and find your way around the obstacles that you run into. And so it's been hit or miss, for years. For years, it's been hit or miss.
We have another 15, 20 minutes, so if you want to keep going.
Well,
we started a little bit later. We started.
Yeah, I know.
Later today,
but we need a little time for discussion about it. But I'll supply these articles, and then people can review them, and and come to grips with some of these concepts. Because again, and there's a lot of individuals that you'll never hear of.
Right.
There was a fellow years ago. I think he's passed away now. His name was, I think his last name was Terrence. And this guy, I got a cassette tape of a couple of interviews with him, just by chance. Just by chance, things comes into my hands. So I'm listening to this fella talk about what he had done in court. And he had done a multitude of things. And his position was he was a spiritual man. I mean, he was a true believer, and he would always, consult, through prayer, through meditation, how he should handle a particular situation. And sometimes he was doing it for himself, and sometimes he was helping others. And he did help a lot of people. And so, but he would do some of the most, what we would think would be outrageous things. And I've given this one story, but let me repeat it again, because this is something that you typically would not do. And that was, he had been called before a court for something. I don't know what exactly, I can't remember what the problem was. But again, going by the Spirit, and he called it the Spirit of the Lord, or Spirit of God, or Holy Ghost, or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, he was going by the Spirit, and the Spirit told him, don't say anything. And so, he went into court, and the judge would ask him questions. He wouldn't say anything. He just remained completely mute. And the prosecutor told the judge, well, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. I said, I'm just talking to him out in the hallway. I said, I know he can talk. And the judge told him, he said, if you don't respond to me, he said, I'm going to put you into jail for contempt. And the guy didn't say anything because the Spirit told him not to. See, there was something else going on that was more important than what that court case was. What was God working with that he would cause this man to simply stand mute. And so the judge said, okay, we'll haul him off. So that, they took him down, put him in a jail cell down there. And then the assistant prosecutor came down to reason with him. He said, what's the problem? You're hearing on contempt, and I know you can talk. And so the fellow told the assistant prosecutor the following, and this is all he would say, because this is what the Spirit of the Lord had told him to tell this guy. And he said, "You go back and tell your boss." Now this is, in other words, go back and tell the prosecutor. He said, "You go back and tell your boss that he needs to repent and turn to God." And that's all he would say. And so I guess he did. He went back and told the prosecutor he needed to repent and turn to God. And 2 hours later, this fellow was released from jail, and he's back out on the street. So what was the reason for him even being involved in that? Was it about him? Was it about the circumstance that he was in court for? Maybe, maybe not. But it appeared that God wanted to get a message to the prosecutor about something in his life, that if he would correct that. We don't know what it was.
Right.
And he never knew what it was, but he delivered the message. And apparently that was the only way that message could get to this other man. And so, what do we do the things that we do for? Is it for only ourselves? Are there other elements involved? Is God ever so kind to send us messengers to remind us of duties and responsibilities? You don't know.
Oh,
you
yeah.
really don't know.
Very true.
And so just like, like Jesus before Pilate, Jesus just stood mute. Why did he do that? Was there something else that was being accomplished, at that occasion? So you have to look closely at these things. It's not cookie cutter technology, folks. I mean, I try to give out knowledge, information, how you can handle this, how you can handle that. Would you use those particular technologies on each and every occasion? Well, maybe not.
It's
Something
interesting.
else may happen.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because one of the reasons I was the queen of discouragement this morning is because of a story I've never shared on Goldfish Report in detail, but I have alluded to my own personal situations that I've been in, and I've been in this very, very nasty legal action for 7 years. So it's not ending. It's in a higher court at this point, but they the courts retaliated against me for speaking out into the media about some things that they were doing wrong. And I wasn't mean about it or nasty. In fact, who knew that I would even get the opportunity to do that? But they did retaliate against me, and then they kidnapped my children. Okay, so I kind of knew at the moment that I sat in that courtroom, and I did nothing wrong. I was never arrested, never a drug addict, never had psychological problems. When you piss them off, they can really destroy your life. And so recently I put out a little alert about some other parents whose children were kidnapped
Yeah.
recently, and it really kind of triggered all of this for me. And I just wanted to say real quick that the Spirit was telling me at that moment, I had this feeling that they were going to do this, and it was trying to prepare me. And it said, don't react, don't talk, don't do anything. Just get up and leave, as soon as you can. They sent a bailiff over to me because they expected, some really they did it deliberately. They wanted worse for me. They wanted to put me in jail. They wanted to trigger me and provoke me. They used this to do that. And so they sent a bailiff over to me when the judge announced he was taking full custody of my children from me. This is how they retaliate against you, and this is what they did to me. And it's been a very long, difficult battle, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of how the courts do this to people and destroy your life and take over. And I'm hoping really that, President Trump will drain the swamp. And I did get a point of frustration over this because it's taking a long time. It just doesn't seem to be getting resolved. And I know trust the plan, I know Q, all this, but this morning, yesterday actually more so, I had which is kind of why I'm glad we didn't do our report yesterday, because I wasn't in the mood. It was not a good day. So kind of
Yeah.
glad it worked out the way it did, Winston. But, it's just that enough is enough. I've been fighting this fight for a long time, and we're getting weary, and we need to have some more change. We need all these corrupt people who are self-serving, their own pockets, and could care less about the people, to get the hell out of those positions of power that they cannot be trusted in. And enough is enough. And so I really just kind of got to that point. And we all do. 7 years is a long time to wait for justice. And where is it? I'm still waiting for it. So I just got tired of it. And that wasn't where it ended. I mean, and they tried everything. I mean, I did get 50% of custody back of my kids, but it's destroyed their life, because they can't have they were back and forth every other day to a different home, and then every other week. And, and the pressure was on them, realizing that there was something that possessed, obviously their father, to realize that, to somehow think this was okay. But I'm not getting into the details. It's just that obviously there's other people involved in this, and I don't want to get into that. But I do have very firsthand knowledge and experience in how these things work and operate, and I've seen it. And what Winston's talking about, when that voice comes in and tells you, now that kept me from, had I reacted the way they wanted, had they provoked me and succeeded, they would have put me in prison, because they had a bailiff standing right next to me. So he was ready to handcuff me. And this is, and let me just tell you that really at the bottom of, at the heart of all of it, is a battle between light and dark. This is why I feel very compelled to talk about Q on my POTUS reports, because this is what Q's talking about. This is a battle between light and dark. And I knew at a certain point, once I realized that was the rabbit hole I fell into and didn't know existed, and found how deep and how dark it goes, that was like my waking up moment. So I didn't really plan to make this report here, my coming out of my waking up moment. But the whole thing was, you got to listen to that voice, that spirit that's guiding you, because it has higher knowledge than you do. And it did save me from going into a further, because it doesn't matter if I had said a word, if I had responded or questioned or anything, I'm sure they would have said, oh, she's acting erratic, because they lie. The judges lie. They all lie. They all lie, people. Realize this. This is who we have, and these are breach of trust. This is what we're talking about in today's report. It's breach of fiduciary responsibility. These are people who are entrusted to serve the public and who lie. And they cheat and steal when they take kickbacks, they take bribes. This has to be eradicated from our system. And if you turn your head and look the other way, it will happen to you, and no one will be there to help you. We all have to do it collectively, or, you're going to have nothing. You're going to be locked in these FEMA camps with everybody else. You got to stop this tyranny on this planet. So I didn't mean to go into that, but I really felt at this point, because I felt guided to do it, to kind of put that message out there, that this has been a battle of good and evil. That's what it comes down to. And you just need to listen to that higher voice that Winston's talking about. You have to be spiritual and connect with that side of you, because it will guide you and tell you what you need to do in times when you really need it.
Well, thank you very much for that testimonial, because I know it came from your heart. And this is a perfect example that people can listen to. Many people, perhaps they've even experienced some of these very things that Luis is talking about. Let me also give a certain amount of encouragement to what's called light workers. I've been talking to James Gilliland about this very subject, for quite a long while. And that is, many of what we call light workers, have become very much discouraged, because this is, as we suppose, this has taken very much time to get accomplished. But take heart. Let me give a vote of confidence for the ultimate success. of what's being undertaken here. Like I say, a long time ago, I got the message from Saint Germain, which was simply, no one will be allowed to stand in the way of this, and anyone who gets in the way will be removed. Now, how long is that going to take? I can't say, but we have the guarantee of those who see the future. They know what the future is. And when they can give us assurances that the program that's being instituted here will not fail, then you can take them for their word. So we have these many, from the other side, we have descended masters. Scott Werner has constantly, encouraged us to get in touch with these masters, some of these archangels and all these kind of things, again, for our own personal I'm trying to think of the right word, but again, the work in the third dimension has to be done by third dimensional entities. We're the boots on the ground. And so if you become a little bit discouraged, a little bit, down in the mouth and stuff, just go have a good laugh and get up the next day and get back at it. It will happen the way that it has been prophesied. It will. Now, there'll be some who fall by the way, for different reasons. And, again, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. Everybody gets to a breaking point. It's possible. It's possible for people to come to a breaking point. And, and I don't point a finger at those either. I mean, look at all the effort, that's been put in, all the labor that's been performed by many. And that's why I keep going back and bringing up some of these fallen heroes, as it were. I try to go back and talk about, some of the ones I've known about, and many of them I don't know about. But some of the ones that I've known about, had association with, who've contributed and so forth, I try to bring those things to the front so that other people can empathize with their own situations and say, well, here's what happened to, 15, 20 years ago. And here we are today facing some of the same problems. What will I do? What will I do about that? And so that's why I've spent so much time, bringing up some of these fallen heroes and different things, that I've known about for encouragement. It's pretty much understood that we're all going to die sometime. It kind of remember, that there was that one movie put out years and years ago called Little Big Man. That's where Dustin Hoffman became a native, and they were running around and all. And anyway, this grandfather, it looked like perilous times were there. They were being attacked and all that kind of stuff. So Dustin Hoffman is talking to this grandfather kind of guy. The grandfather's comment was, he looked up, around and everything, and says, looks like a good day to die. That was his attitude. Oh, it looks like a good day to die. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. That's his attitude. Yeah. And I think in the movie, he did get killed, but as far as he was concerned, yeah, hey, looks like a good day to die. Okay. So certainly that grandfather realized that it wasn't, like Paul says, it wasn't only for this life that we live. It's not just for this third dimension that we live. Right. So, if you've become a little discouraged, if you can pull yourself up with the bootstraps a little bit and plug forward another day or two, I think you'd be hugely pleased with the results. So don't become discouraged. Folks, keep at it. Keep at it.
Yeah. No, it's very true. And, and I have this is my Queen of Discouragement hat today. But you know what? When you turn it around, it's really a Q. So you know what? That means that, and this is our hope right here, Q. So, there's always another side of the coin. So,
Yeah,
I mean, look, if I've lasted 7 years through this, I've just realized that I know what it is. I know it's a battle between dark and light, and I know that um, you know, they just
well, let me
I know
put
they
it
were
to you.
trying to take me out because
Yeah,
I'm a
you
strong
did
soul.
something I probably wouldn't do. And that was, you put in the court record this whole thing was a result of black magic. I don't think I would.
It
It's
was a
true.
black. You
It's
remembered that,
true.
Winston.
Well, of course I did. I mean, I was kind of shocked to see that in the court pleading, but it's true. But you called it what it was.
I called it what it was. Yeah, okay. Well, we won't get into that at this point in any more detail.
I
But
just get the big kick out of some of that stuff.
well, the part of the thing is that you know, you let them know. Sometimes you tip your hand, you show your hand a little, tip your hat, whatever.
So that they know that you
You
know.
know, and that we can really get into a battle in different ways, and
We're coming out of the darkness into the light.
yeah, it's it's kind of like people are waking up, and you can't get away with what you've done anymore. And
Yeah.
now that it's at a higher level, we'll see and hope that the right decisions are made and that justice is served, and we'll see that we can.
Yeah.
But folks, it's part of the reason I do and went into policy and Goldfish Report and things like that. If that didn't happen to me, I wouldn't be here doing Goldfish Report. I can tell you that. So I do know there's also other reasons that we might not understand why we have to experience some kind of hardships or troubles, but there is something to be learned from it if you can take that attitude. If you don't, you just be a victim of everything, then it would be very difficult. But
Yeah.
you have to stop and realize that there's, people like Winston here that have ways to have technology to offer you to help you help yourself. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Somebody
Well,
said,
again, like I apologize because we didn't have time to really digest, some of the information in these articles, but I'll provide them and people can, spend the time. And if they have questions about some of that, they can always send, emails to the office. After some of these reports, I get quite a few emails from different ones asking, about this or that. But then again, like I mentioned, if you want to understand deeply into some of these concepts that we're trying to present here today, the Civil Court DVD and the Accepted for Value series, if you want to utilize some of this technology for an understanding of those things, I don't encourage anybody to just go slap something together and throw it at the court. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Exactly.
And so you better understand what it is you're doing when you do some of these things. And so again, I'm not trying to encourage people to do foolhardy things. Understand what you're doing, and the only way you can understand it is if you know the material.
Study it. Exactly.
You have to know the material.
Now, Winston, your website, as we always post in the description section of the videos, are always here. But could you just repeat and what your contact email is also on that website? Do you know?
Yeah. Our website is at www.wssic.com, and the WSSIC stands for Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce. And if you go to that website, if you go to the product page, then you can find these things I've described. Also, we also report on our YouTube section until they started taking stuff down. That would go on BitChute. But these interviews you can also find on our website.
Yeah.
And again, Louisa this last week had put out that short presentation about those babies that were stolen right from their mother in the hospital. That's gotten quite a few views, and we put that up on ours too, so that our people could go and listen to that presentation. That was ever so important. That was ever so important to wake people up a little bit about what could and what does happen to people.
Right.
Any mother who saw that, had to have been shocked, horrified, and touched in their heart. We can't put up with that crap.
Right. What I wanted to do was, sadly, since the report was published, I was notified by a father who has also been involved in a case where the courts are giving him a difficult time. The mother was involved in an accident. She's in a well, it's a correctional rehab facility because of something else that happened, but they're not, they're giving him a hard time about keeping the baby. And so I wanted to just screen share really quick this. I'm hoping our viewers can also find it in your heart to help this father keep Navia with dad medical. At first they were trying to kidnap the baby, and they're still trying to watch him and see whether or not they will take the baby. It's a beautiful little girl. And the father's trying to raise some money for an attorney for legal representation, and he's only got 25 bucks out of the 5,000. So also, if you're out there, if you could kick in a few bucks to help this father, that would be really helpful. I did hear from the other case that that there was a gag order put on any social media for that case, Winston. So it was removed from my site
Well,
for the moment.
let me just say to whoever put that gag order on there, you can kiss my ass. You can kiss my ass because you're going down. You're going to be one of these in the 35,000 seal indictment. You're getting arrested. You're going to get Mo, you worthless SOB. You like that? So go ahead and put your stupid gag orders on it. You see what happens to you.
Yeah.
Pardon
See,
me for getting
no,
irritated.
but this is what it's come down to. If we don't start getting, mad about what's going on, you can't turn your cheek and be indifferent, people. We're never going to change our world this way by
Yeah,
turning your cheek and looking the other way. The Good Samaritan, be the Good Samaritan. Don't be the one that walks past the guy. Be the one that stops and picks him up.
I agree.
Okay, thanks,
And
Winston.
I promise to smile.
I'm working on it. I'm
It's
working.
hard, it's
I
hard to
got my
smile
chisel and
sometimes.
hammer. I'll put it in there, but at some point today, I'm not doing so bad.
Sometimes it's real hard to smile and have a light heart because I mean, the seriousness of what happens. And it's not just this way here, it's this way all over the planet.
Right. It is, sadly, and we all have to, and there's more of us than them, so why don't we all band together and just say, we reject this. This is not what we want. Okay, we
Yeah,
can do it without war, we could do it without violence, but we just need to stand together. That's the simplest solution there is. But they know divided they can conquer us, which is why Q always mentions in his post, QAnon, they want you divided. Their biggest threat is an awakening um, masses, the awakening people. We are their biggest threat. So if we know that, we just need to know that, we need to stick together, and we're just doing it for the good of people, and they'll benefit from it too. See, they don't even have it in their psychopathology to understand that what we do, they would be a beneficiary of as well. That whatever
yeah,
good we bring, I don't worship Moloch, but they do. So there's Satanists and Luciferians on this planet, and they control all the governments. And so the thing is, we don't want that for us. Okay, we want peace, and they will benefit from it too. They just will not stay in power because it's just in the Bible. I mean, it's in the end times. It's time to change, folks. Time to change. So I'm going to put those links in the description section. I'll put the link for the father. His name's Earl. I have been in contact with him. He is going through a struggle. He's up and down every day in terms of demands from, like he was a CPS worker trying to monitor him. He's a brand new dad. Leave him alone. Let him raise his baby. He has the right to raise his baby without interference from the state. What's with the CPS? Why do they have to interfere in everybody's life? I mean, this is the thing, and it's a trap, because the state, because of the virtue of the title, your birth certificate that they have over you, as a result of that, they literally can come in and claim that they're the parents patrie, which is what they did to me, and take your kids.
yeah.
So let's band together, folks, and stop this, because there's not going to be any quality of life for your children. If you don't think if you think this is going to go away by itself, you're wrong. Okay, because your children, you think it's bad now, it will be worse for them. There'll be no future for them. There will be no future for any of us. This is the time we all have to act together, one way or the other, and we need to do, and more. Uh, as we all need to do more individually. That's all I could say. So thanks for viewing. Thank you for your support, for sending your links that I repost on our news page. Our news page is constantly moving, constantly going with news coming in, and of course so is our Twitter feed as well. So follow us on Twitter, follow us and subscribe on Facebook. Follow us and subscribe on our various channels. Now we have, our Patreon page. Of course, we are so grateful to our patrons. Also on our YouTube, we have 2 YouTubes. Remember, we had to create new ones after they deleted our channel. When they did that, we lost all of our subscribers, and it really did have an impact in terms of the contributions that people were making, because we lost those. They couldn't find us. So we don't monetize our channel, but we do. It is a viewer supported program. There's just no other way we can do it without viewer support. But you can look for our archives. You can look for our regular YouTube channel. It has the number of subscribers next to it. That's how you know it's our channel. And then, of course, you can look for us on BitChute, where all of our reports are available there. And of course, we will have an archive page available there too. And as Winston said, he posts these on his website as well. So I'll have all these links in the description section of this report for our viewers. And we hope that you have a great weekend. And Winston, thank you for this great presentation today. This is really important information.
Well, I apologize for unkind words. Sometimes I just can't contain myself. Hillbillies don't do justice. We do a reckoning. That's altogether different than what you're talking about. But there's a reckoning coming.
Yeah.
And when that reckoning is put into effect,
mm-hmm.
these people will no longer exist on this planet.
Okay. Well, we're all waiting. We're all waiting because we've had enough of this. So I know everybody out there feels the same way. I mean, everybody feels the same way. I see it all the time. People are tired. They don't believe anything's really changing, although there is things.
Oh, it is. It's changing.
There are things that are changing. I do agree with that. I just, feel like, we have to trust the plan, as hard as it is. Trust the plan. Trust the plan. That's what Q says. So watch out. We'll be back on Monday for our POTUS report. On Monday, we'll have more updates from Q. There's so much going on with QAnon and this rally in Duluth and all these really great people out there who are supporting the president. So keep going to those rallies and showing him your support. He's doing the best he can. And we'll, hope you all have a really great weekend. And we'll see you all next week. And I'll see you next week, Winston, for another episode of Country Roads. So until then, have a great weekend, everyone. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.